Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the market site in Times Square, New York City, we have Jay Dearborn, president of WEX, a provider of fintech and payment solutions. We're going to take a look at the current payment landscape and talk about how investors are approaching valuations at this point. And certainly, Jay, a hot topic in the marketplace right now for sure. Give us an overview of the valuation environment.
Yeah, well, look, it's tough. I mean, we've seen valuations across all segments come down over the past 6 months, but in fintech and payments in particularly, it's come down quite a bit over the past 6 months. I think it's important to understand going into this, we had really inflated valuations for fintech over the past couple of years, particularly in that area of disruptive fintech. And I think what investors are really looking towards right now within fintech, within payments, are those that are at scale, making money, can be avenues for consolidation.
Yeah, looking for profitability and revenue streams for sure.
Right.
Did the pandemic help to shape any of these trends, or certainly they accelerated a number of the trends in fintech?
Well, look, I think with fintech, what's important throughout COVID, I think two things really happened. One is there was a huge demand for fintech tools, particularly in B2B where WEX plays, things that automate workflow. The other thing that was happening is we printed a lot of money, interest rates were historically low, there was a search for yield, and so you had lots of speculative bets across the board. I think there was a huge amount of innovation that happened over the past couple of years. When we look back on this time, we'll look at it and say, wow, we have new products, new services, but really in these innings that are going forward, we're going to have to figure out how do we actually monetize those.
How do you think investors are going to view the payment space going forward?
Well, I think payments is a good bet in general, right? So it tracks the overall macro economy. It's fairly inflation resistant, as most of the business models track to the value of money. I think the question really though is in fintech and in payments is what's at scale? At the end of the day, fintech and payments, it's all about scale.
Right.
You don't make money that hits the bottom line until you've gotten to a certain size.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And scale in particular. Do you think we're going to see some consolidation in the space because valuations have been reset and there are going to be some outliers that are not going to make it?
I mean, there's no question in my mind
Right.
that there'll be consolidation in this space. Valuations dropping, makes these deals absolutely possible. I think the question, going back to the scale point, is are there chassis, established customers, point solutions that exist that can start to come together and provide a unified experience for customers at the end of the day, which is really what they want.
Let's talk about fraud for a moment here.
Yeah.
Can the payment system, ecosystem, stay resilient, be stable, and protect against fraud? And, it's everywhere.
Yeah, fraud is everywhere, but in payments, fraud and resiliency, these are table stakes items. None of us really have a business without protecting against resiliency and fraud. For example, at WEX, we guarantee 99.99% uptime. That's 53 minutes of unscheduled downtime per year. And then for fraud, we're one of the largest virtual card producers in the world. Right. And we lock down these virtual cards so they can only be used in certain places at certain times with certain vendors. And so we have very low incidence of fraud. How
do you expect the user experience and user interfaces to evolve in the B2B space?
Yeah, interesting. So what we see in the consumer space, like think about it like Venmo, think about what you do with Amazon Prime, you have become used to interacting with financial tools in a mobile-first way. And I think that's bleeding over to the B2B space now. I think about, particularly in the down market, so for small business, owner-operators, office managers, they're expecting a mobile-first experience. At WEX, we've invested in this trend. We launched earlier this year a new product called Flume, which takes all of the best parts of our ecosystem, but then wraps it in a mobile-first experience, very consumer-centric, but really at the end of the day, it's enabling businesses to pay and get paid.
Another question we've been asking ourselves through the pandemic and as we evolve from it, cost centers. How do you turn cost centers into revenue centers?
Yeah, how do you turn cost centers into revenue centers? I mean, any modern CFO will tell you that this is part of their mandate. We used to think of businesses, and particularly the accounts payable, accounts receivable department, as highly laborious, pushing checks in a weekly check run, and lots of clerks running around. But what we do today at WEX is help CFOs digitize that workflow, and then also put as much as possible on a virtual card, which then generates interchange, generates rebate for that CFO. In effect, turning what was a cost center into a revenue center for the company.
All right, Jay, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.